In the charming town of Maplewood, where autumn leaves swirled in a golden dance and every street seemed to whisper stories of love and longing, lived a woman named Clara. She was the embodiment of grace, her warm smile capable of brightening even the dreariest days. Known for her nurturing spirit, Clara found solace in her garden, passion in her kitchen, and devotion in her marriage to Mark. Mark, a dedicated software engineer, spent long hours lost in the intricate world of codes and algorithms. His work demanded much of his time, leaving Clara to tend to their cozy home, a place filled with warmth yet slowly becoming a landscape of routine. Their conversations, once brimming with dreams and aspirations, had dwindled to the mundane necessities of daily life: bills, chores, and schedules. Everything changed on a crisp autumn evening during a backyard barbecue, where laughter echoed beneath the setting sun. Among the guests was Alex, Mark's old college friend, who had recently moved back to town. Charismatic and full of life, Alex carried an infectious energy that Clara hadn't realized she had been longing for. As the evening stretched on, Clara found herself drawn to him, their conversation flowing effortlessly like a river finding its course. They reminisced about old adventures, shared laughter over past misadventures, and for the first time in a long while, Clara felt a spark of excitement ignite within her. "Remember that road trip where we got completely lost?" Clara asked, her eyes gleaming with nostalgia. Alex chuckled, his laughter rich and warm. "How could I forget? I was convinced we'd end up in another state." Their shared memories wove an invisible thread between them, binding them in a moment that felt both exhilarating and forbidden. As Mark stood at the grill, engaged in conversation with other guests, Clara felt something shift inside her, an awakening she hadn't expected. In the days that followed, their paths began to cross more frequently. Initially, their meetings were cloaked in the innocent purpose of discussing community projects, but soon they became something more. Coffee dates turned into long walks in the park, where conversations grew deeper, revealing hidden dreams and long-buried desires. In Alex's presence, Clara felt seen, heard, understood in a way that had become foreign in her marriage. One golden afternoon, as they strolled beneath the canopy of amber leaves, Alex paused, turning to her with a quiet intensity. "Clara," he said gently, his voice laced with something unspoken, "sometimes life leads us to unexpected places. It's okay to seek happiness." His words lingered between them, stirring emotions she wasn't ready to confront. "I love Mark," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, "but sometimes I feel stuck." Alex took a step closer, his voice softer now. "And you deserve to feel alive. We all do." His words seeped into the cracks of her soul, filling the empty spaces she had ignored for too long. With every stolen glance, every whispered conversation, every secret meeting, Clara felt herself slipping further into the tide of something both thrilling and terrifying. Yet the weight of her choices pressed heavily upon her. Each evening, as she returned home to Mark, she carried the burden of guilt, masking behind forced smiles and empty reassurances. He, ever trusting and devoted, sensed a shift but attributed it to work stress or the changing seasons. One evening, as she stood in the kitchen preparing dinner, the scent of rosemary and garlic filling the air, her gaze landed on their wedding photo hanging on the wall. The captured smiles, once so full of promise, now felt like ghosts of a distant past. Mark entered the kitchen, his presence warm and familiar. "Everything okay, Clara?" he asked, his eyes filled with quiet concern. She forced a smile, pushing the ache down. "Yeah, just a long day." Later that night, as they sat together on the couch watching their favorite show, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of disconnection. The warmth of their home had become a facade, a place where she played the role of a devoted wife while her heart waged a silent war. As weeks turned to months, Clara found herself at a crossroads. The intoxicating pull of Alex was undeniable, yet so was the gravity of the vows she had once spoken to Mark. She was caught in a web of desire and duty, torn between the life she had built and the possibility of something new. One rainy afternoon, she and Alex found themselves sheltering beneath the awning of a small cafe. The air was thick with unspoken tension, the raindrops drumming a steady rhythm against the roof. "Clara," Alex murmured, breaking the silence, "I can't pretend this isn't real. What we have, it's something rare." Her heart pounded, the storm inside her mirroring the one outside. She had never felt more alive, yet never more conflicted. "Maybe we should take a step back," she said, her voice trembling. This isn't fair to him. A flicker of disappointment crossed Alex's face, but his gaze remained steady. And what about us? What about what we found? She had no answer, only a whirlwind of emotions crashing against the walls of her heart. In the days that followed, Clara wrestled with the truth, the choices before her heavy with consequence. Then, one evening, Mark surprised her with suggestion. "A weekend at the lake," he said, his eyes bright with hope. "Just us. I think we could use the time together." She swallowed the lump in her throat, forcing a nod. "That sounds wonderful, Mark. I'd love that." But as the weekend approached, so did her anxiety. She knew the moment of reckoning was near. Sitting at the edge of their bed the night before the trip, she stared at her reflection in the mirror, searching for the woman she used to be. She could no longer ignore the truth. Not for Mark, not for Alex, not for herself. As the rain poured outside, mirroring the storm within her, she knew whatever choice she made now would shape the rest of her life. Clara hesitated, her hands trembling as she clutched the fabric of her sweater. The weight of her emotions pressed against her chest like an unbearable force, but she could no longer keep them locked away. "Mark," she whispered, her voice barely above her breath. "Can we talk for a minute?" Mark looked up from his suitcase, his brow furrowing at the unsteadiness in her voice. Concern flickered across his face as he set aside a neatly folded sweater and turned to face her fully. "Of course," he said, his voice gentle but laced with worry. "What's on your mind?" Clara swallowed hard, drawing in a deep breath as she braced herself for the words that had been building inside her for weeks. "I've been feeling disconnected," she admitted, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "I think we need to talk about us, about our relationship." A shadow passed over Mark's expression, his concern deepening. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice careful, measured. "Is it work? Are you unhappy?" She bit her lip, struggling to find the right words. "It's not that simple," she murmured. I feel like we've lost something along the way." Mark's grip on her hand tightened, the warmth of his touch of familiar comfort. "Clara," he said softly, his eyes searching hers, "we can work through anything. Just tell me what you're feeling." A rush of emotion surged through her. Love, guilt, fear. Mark had always been her rock, the man who had stood by her side through every joy and hardship. But the truth sat heavy on her chest, and she could no longer run from it. She hesitated, her voice breaking as she forced herself to speak. "I've been spending time with Alex. It started innocently, but I can't deny that I developed feelings for him." The silence that followed was deafening. The air between them grew thick, suffocating. Mark's expression shifted from concern to disbelief, the color draining from his face. His fingers, once steady and warm, slipped away from hers. "You've been seeing Alex." His voice was hoarse, as if the words had physically wounded him. "How could you?" Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks as she shook her head, desperate to explain. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she pleaded. "I felt lost, and he was there. I never wanted to hurt you." Mark's face twisted in pain, his jaw tightening as he took a step back. "I trusted you, Clara," he whispered, his voice filled with raw betrayal. "How could you break that trust?" She wiped at her tears, her heart pounding in her chest. "I know I've made mistakes, and I hate myself for it," she said, her voice breaking. "But I need to be honest with you. I don't want to lose you, Mark. I want to work through this, whatever it takes." He turned away, his hands running through his hair in frustration. His breath came in uneven bursts as he struggled to process the weight of her confession. "Do you love him?" The question was sharp, piercing through the air like a dagger. Clara's heart clenched. She had asked herself that very question countless times, but standing here now, facing the man she had built a life with, she finally knew the answer. "I don't know," she whispered. "I care about him, but I love you. You're my husband." Mark's lips pressed into a thin line, his voice strained. "Is that enough?" The weight of his words settled over her like a lead blanket. Love had always been their foundation, but was love alone enough to mend what she had broken? "I don't want to lose you, Mark," she said again, her voice trembling. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Mark let out a slow, shaky breath. "You've left me with a choice "Clara," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow, "I need time to think." Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving Clara standing in the deafening silence of their unraveling world. The weekend trip loomed ahead. Once a beacon of rekindling love, now a painful reminder of the fragility of what they had built. When they arrived at the lake the next day, the scenery was breathtaking. Calm waters stretching endlessly beneath the golden hues of the setting sun, but the beauty of it all felt like a cool contrast to the storm raging between them. Mark remained distant, his voice clipped, his gaze averted. Every effort Clara made to engage him was met with strained silence or empty responses, the weight of unspoken words growing heavier with every passing hour. As the evening descended, Clara stepped onto the wooden porch, wrapping her arms around herself as she watched the sun dip below the horizon. The sky blazed with shades of orange and pink, painting a picture of fleeting beauty, and she longed, desperately, to feel the warmth of connection she once shared with Mark. A quiet rustling behind her made her turn. Mark stood there, his expression softened by the fading light. "Can we talk?" His voice was quieter now, less sharp, though the pain still lingered in his eyes. She nodded, her pulse quickening as they sat together on the porch steps. "I'm sorry for everything, Mark," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I never meant to hurt you." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I just don't understand how this happened," he admitted. "We were happy, weren't we?" A lump formed in Clara's throat. "We were," she said softly. "But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of who I was. I thought I could find that part of me again with Alex, but I was wrong." Mark's eyes searched Hayes, a flicker of hope amidst the sorrow. "And now—" Clara drew in a shaky breath, her decision finally clear. "I want to rebuild what we had. I want to fight for us, if you're willing to give me a chance." A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Mark spoke, his voice steady but pained. "Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight, Clara. It takes time, and I need to know that you're truly committed to making this work." "I am," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. I love you, Mark." He reached for her hand, his fingers lacing through Hayes, his grip hesitant but warm. "I want to believe you," he admitted, "but I need time." As they sat beneath the star-strewn sky, the silence between them felt different, not empty, but full of unspoken promises. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but Clara was ready to fight for what truly mattered. The weeks that followed were filled with slow, careful steps toward healing. They attended couples therapy, peeling back the layers of their relationship, confronting the gaps that had led Clara astray. It was painful and messy, filled with nights of tears and moments of raw honesty. But there were also small victories, the return of laughter at the dinner table, the warmth of Mark's hand lingering a little longer in Hayes. Clara knew there was no erasing the past, no simple fix of the pain she had caused. But each day, with patience, understanding, and unwavering effort, they began to rebuild. Brick by brick, step by step, they worked toward a love that could withstand even the most fractured of storms. And as Clara lay beside Mark one evening, his fingers intertwining with Hayes beneath the covers, she whispered a silent vow to herself. This time, she would not take their love for granted. This time, she would fight for them.